The year was 1999. The Space Shuttle Discovery became the first vessel to successfully dock with the International Space Station, and Bill Clinton became the first U.S. president to dodge impeachment for docking with an intern. David Cronenberg acted as jury president for the 52nd Cannes Film Festival, where Rosetta won the Palme d'Or, but not in contention was a little film about a man with a big dream, a small bank balance, and a script for Chubby Rain. But Jesse never saw it. Until now. This is Movies I Missed 1999, Episode 8, Bowfinger.
I'm Justin Munoz.
And I'm Ryan Miller.
This is Movies I Missed, year 1999, episode number 8. Today we'll be talking about the movie Bowfinger, released August 13th, 1999, with a running time of 1 hour and 37 minutes. I do want to give a warning. We will be discussing all aspects of this movie, so be advised that includes spoilers. Bowfinger is a comedy film about Bobby Bowfinger, a desperate movie producer who concocts a plan to make a blockbuster film called Chubby Rain, with A-list actor Kit Ramsey without Kit knowing he's in the movie. Bowfinger and his crew secretly film Kit in various situations, believing they're just making a sci-fi movie. The chaos escalates as Kit's paranoia increases, thinking he's being pursued by aliens. Ultimately, Bowfinger's unorthodox methods lead to unexpected success and recognition.
Currently packing fries at the Burger King on Douglas.
Do you have any experience in motion pictures?
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. I have quite a bit experience. I'm an active renter at Blockbuster, and I attend the film to cinema as much as possible, weekly, bi-weekly, intermediately.
Would you be willing to cut your hair?
Yes, but it's usually better if someone else does it. I've had a few accidents.
Can you see without your glasses?
Oh, yeah, I can see. I don't really see well, but I can see.
Do you have contacts?
I have contact lenses. I can wear my contact lenses. That'll help.
Mm-hmm.
Can I put my glasses back on?
Sure, please. Put your glasses back on.
I'm gonna get a little headache.
Would you be willing to show your naked rear end in a movie?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Bowfinger, movie that you have seen, but a movie that I have not seen. We'll see if I missed it or not. Directed by Frank Oz and written by Steve Martin. What's your history with Bowfinger?
I can't tell you when or how I saw it for the first time. It is a movie that we had on VHS. I bet you that like my parents never once watched it. So I think it was like my movie. I don't know how I saw it, but it is a movie that back in the days of VHS, I mean, the latter days of VHS, I watched many a time, and I got early on DVD, and, you know, I, at this point, probably haven't seen it in 5 or 6 years, but I would say it's a movie I've seen 10 plus times in my life. What's
your relationship with Steve Martin? Because I feel like we have a history, right? Like we've done the Sidetrack podcast for 14 years, or did it, and I think Steve Martin was always not a point of contention, but I feel like we viewed him differently.
Well,
like,
I think classically, The Jerk is a movie that I had never seen, and maybe within the first like 15 or 20 episodes of Sidetracked, you and an early guest of ours got on me about it, and I watched it and wasn't crazy about it. I mean, Steve Martin for me, primarily Little Shop of Horrors, which I love, and he's only a small part in it, but he's a great part in it.
Yep.
I mean, I think I haven't seen it since I was young, but Father of the Bride was kind of a big movie in like the 90s, and I think that's one I probably saw with my mother and my sister and my grandmother at the theater.
Not a movie where it's like, I'm gonna, you know, as a kid, it's like, oh, I love Father of the Bride, right? Like it's very...
Yeah.
It's more, I mean, for adults and ladies, and, you know, it's a romantic comedy. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some things in recent years. I definitely haven't seen nearly everything he's done. But yeah, I mean, when I think Steve Martin, and I'm probably alone in this, the two things that immediately come to mind are The Dentist and in Little Shop of Horrors and Bowfinger.
Yeah. Bowfinger was a pretty big glaring spot of omission for me. Like I'd seen a lot of Steve Martin stuff. Gosh, we watched Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I want to say, for Sidetracked.
We did, and that's a movie I really love, and I have bought
so good.
Subsequently.
He was really good in that. It was really funny. Also directed by Frank Oz. You know, he's got his SNL stuff where he wasn't on the cast, but has done, you know, so many hosting jobs and was basically on the show for a while.
It's him and Alec Baldwin are the two who've been on it or have hosted the most?
Yeah. The Jerk I just grew up with. It was like a movie that was like on repeat in our house. Most, you know, my parents loved it, so it would be played a lot. And it was just something that, like, for me was like seminal in my early years for comedy. Like, it just was just there for a lot of people, I think. I do understand if someone doesn't think it is as funny as I do, but you know, when you grow up with it, it carries a weight to it more so than other movies. But I feel like in the 90s, as like he began to move into more of the romantic comedy type things or children's movies, like the
Family
Cheaper by
stuff.
the Dozen,
The Pink Panther movies.
Yeah, that stuff just sort of like, I was like, I'm not really into this. I don't know if I haven't seen the Pink Panther movies, but it wasn't for me. Maybe I could go back and watch it and realize it was, but as of now,
but
I haven't
here's a
seen
question, because I feel like my whole life I've been like a man on an island with Bowfinger. Like, I don't feel it's a movie that, you know, is a standard Steve Martin that everybody knows and loves. I feel like it's a little more of a cult movie among his filmography.
Sure.
Is it a movie that, outside of maybe me mentioning it here and there, you ever had like a burning desire where like, this is supposed to be good, I need to see it, or anything like that?
I've like heard good things throughout the internet or from you, but not like it was. I don't feel like it's ever been like, oh, you haven't seen Bowfinger, you got to see Bowfinger. You know what I mean? Like, feels, which is weird because it's got both Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy, and feels like it would be a pretty well talked about or well regarded movie. And when we get to the reviews, it's, you know, it's got good reviews and stuff, but yeah, for some reason it's just kind of an outlier, and I'm not sure why that is.
I feel like, you know, we not terribly long ago talked about Galaxy Quest, and that's a movie that it came out. It's really funny, and like, considering its niche subject matter, I think it does a really good job of handling that niche subject matter. So people who are into that, it appeals to them. And I feel like Bowfinger, it's a little more of a broad comedy because, you know, the whole industry of Hollywood, I think most people can understand, whereas, you know, Star Trek and the like is something that only certain people are going to be into. But for whatever reason, I still think that this is kind of, you know, it's a small group of people trying to get a science fiction movie made. It's still kind of weirdly niche. So I think that the people who like it really like it, but it's like the, you know, mass audiences never saw it or heard about it or felt they needed to see it or something. That's kind of the way I view it. Because again, all my life, like since this movie came out, I've been a fan of it, and I know so few people who've ever even seen it.
Did it just get lost in the glut of comedies that came out this year?
I don't know. I mean, as we've said numerous times, 1999 was a big year, but I mean,
Adam Sandler had Big Daddy, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, also with Heather Graham. I guess American Pie would be considered a comedy. South Park, Office Space, which obviously didn't take away any box office numbers because that one didn't do well. But
like, yeah, at this point where Steve Martin, I feel like Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy were both like, you know, bridging on 10 years past when they were a big draw, maybe.
Yeah. We'll get into that in the notes. Like Eddie Murphy was like, he was kind of having a resurgence with the Nutty Professor that came off of.
But again, he's kind of like Steve Martin, also going towards the family-friendly stuff like that, and then Dr. Dolittle, and
it feels like with both Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy, they started shooting towards kids, or aiming towards kids with the movies that they're picking, and so adults aren't necessarily going to see their comedies as much.
Yeah, like
And I
this
think
movie would appeal to an adult, but it doesn't look like an adult like centric movie, but it definitely doesn't appeal to kids, so they're not taking their kids to see it because their kids want to.
It's kind of right in the middle,
like,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's that weird gray area because like this movie is not a mature film or an adult film. It has, you know, some sex jokes and stuff like that, but
but they're like
it falls in this weird gray area where it's not for kids, but it's not for adults. It's like fine for everybody, but then nobody wanted to see it or something.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the cast and crew. I mentioned Frank Oz as the director, directed Little Shop of Horrors, you know, worked with Steve Martin a bunch, did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. What About Bob is one of my favorites. Obviously, voice of Yoda, Miss Piggy. But you know, he's got some movies in there that are just really, really good. Written by Steve Martin, who, gosh, I'm just going to pull out some of the notes. This was one of the three movies that he wrote in the 90s. He wrote LA Story, A Simple Twist of Fate, and then Bowfinger. So
never seen those other two. Didn't
do a lot of writing in the 90s. But I thought this movie was well written.
It's funny, though. Like, again, don't know a ton about Steve Martin. I know he, you know, is a stand-up comedian. He's done SNL a bunch. He's obviously a movie star. All the years knowing and loving this movie, I never realized that he wrote this. I just never paid attention to that detail. And when I saw, Steve Martin wrote this, I was like, I wonder what else he's written, thinking there weren't going to be many things because I didn't know him as like a movie writer. But then I looked at his lineup and it's like a billion things, including like Three Amigos. And I'm like, I'm just an idiot. I didn't realize.
For sure. Yeah, definitely still writing. I think he writes that show, Murders in the Buildings.
Only Murders in the Building. Yeah. Him and
which I haven't watched.
Martin Short.
Mm-hmm. But starring Steve Martin as Bowfinger, Eddie Murphy as Kit Ramsey, and also
Jiff Ramsey.
Man, I just want to say, like, I'm not super into, like, I think Tropic Thunder does a good job parodying like what Eddie Murphy does, like in the Clumps and all that kind of stuff. Like, I was never really into him playing multiple characters. Like, I just didn't think it was that funny.
Mm-hmm.
I was dying at Jiff.
All right, yeah, we have a very important scene here. This is one of the hot scenes that is about heat and chemistry.
Oh, that's the artistic portion of the film.
That's right. So you just give her a little room, react normally, be sensitive above all, because in this scene, Daisy's going to take off her blouse. Okay. All right. There's your mark. Now, you understand the scene. You're not sure if you still love Keith, but you're offering yourself to him in order to save the planet. Okay, Jiff, right up here. Now, we're starting here. Uh-huh. And up. Okay. And roll center.
All right. Miss Edie? Mark?
Okay, you're not sure if you love him, but you want to save the planet. And action.
Keith, I don't know what's right anymore. All I know is I have feelings that make me need you. Need you now.
Awesome. You're doing great. You're gonna be a star.
And cut.
Jiff is a fully realized character to me. And it's like,
gosh.
With just, like, even when they cut his hair to look like his brother Kit, just his facial expression, like squinting his eyes and like showing more of his teeth and gums, he's a completely different character. He's really good in that role.
I didn't realize that was even coming. Like, I didn't realize he played two characters in this movie. Like, I've seen the poster with the two of them on the cover, but I wasn't really thinking about it. I just thought he played the action star. I didn't know he was going to play another character. So when he showed up and was as funny as he was, I was like legit dying. Like, I couldn't believe how funny that was. And I don't like the Clumps and the Nutty Professor where he plays like two different versions of himself. Like, I just not really into that, but this was, to me, it was different. It just felt different. And I thought it was great.
Yeah.
We've got Heather Graham as Daisy. Heather Graham is an interesting one. Like, she's been in a lot of stuff. Boogie Nights. She was in the Austin Powers movies we mentioned. It feels like, again, in this early 2000s, late 90s, she was kind of everywhere. She was like the it girl. But I feel like she was definitely typecast into the slutty dumb blonde, right?
Yeah. Like I was thinking about it, I know her from stuff like this, Boogie Nights, Austin Powers 2. She was like kind of big, but she, to my recollection that I'm aware of, was never like the lead in a movie. She was always like the female lead, the love interest.
Yes.
And she's legitimately funny in this. So it's not like she doesn't have talent. It's just, I feel like she never, like, Cameron Diaz starts out in like The Mask as just like the sexy lady to be on the male actor's arm. But like she eventually had like a broader career and starred in things. Yeah. And was like co-lead and stuff, where I feel like Heather Graham, that never really happened.
I don't think she has the same thing that Cameron Diaz has. Like they're both obviously very attractive ladies, but I feel like Heather Graham is good at what she does.
I mean, the thing for me is you may be right, but I feel like I've never seen her have the chance to prove us wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Like watching The Mask, again, that was Cameron Diaz's first movie. And she's great in that part. She's very attractive, which is the main thing about it. But I don't know if I ever would have watched that and thought like, yeah, she's like a leading lady or is going to have really good dramatic turns and stuff like Vanilla Sky later on,
Yeah, yeah. Maybe she has, and we just it's gone by us where it wasn't that good. Like that's always a possibility.
I mean, I know so Stuart Gordon, who directed The Reanimator and From Beyond, some of my favorite horror movies. There was a movie that he had a script for that he never got to make before he died called Suitable Flesh. And Barbara Crampton, who was like his scream queen, who was in a bunch of his movies, she is like a producer as well as an actress now. And she got together some people after Stuart Gordon died, and as kind of a love letter to him, got Suitable Flesh produced, and she like co-stars in it, and Heather Graham plays the lead in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
I've yet to see it. I really want to. I bought a copy on Blu-ray recently. I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet, but like I believe Heather Graham plays the lead in that, and that's the only movie I can think of where she does.
Yeah. She's really good in this movie, though. She plays the part perfectly. Like she comes from, I think, Ohio or something like that. And she's like, she said she gives herself a week to become a movie star, which is pretty funny. And then she ends up sleeping with everyone. It was really funny.
Well, it's funny because you think she's just like the dumb, like stars in her eyes kid from the country who comes out to Hollywood and then is used left, right, and center and dumped, by the wayside. But then you start to learn, oh no, she is definitely more cunning than we think. And like, yes, she's being used, but she's also using other people.
Everyone else. Yeah. Her last line was hilarious, where she's like finds the most powerful lesbian in Hollywood. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
We got Christine Baranski as Carol. She's one of those people that is like one of those actors where it's like, oh, I've seen her in a million things. She usually plays someone like snooty or stuck up. And that's kind of who she is in this movie as well. But I thought she was really funny as like the actress, and she plays it like really over the top in a great way. I thought she was really funny.
Yeah, she's like the aging actress who is all about her craft and maybe isn't that good, but gives it her all and, is just looking for that big break.
Yeah, she was just really funny. Terrence Stamp as Terry Stricker, who's running basically like a Scientology sort of religion. He's
it's
Superman.
Funny. Like I loved this movie, like I said, for years and years watching it, and I hadn't seen it for a good chunk of years before this rewatch. And this is the first time it ever occurred to me, oh shit, they're making fun of Scientology.
Right. Yeah, for sure. We got Robert Downey Jr. in a role that's barely in the movie, plays Jay Renfro, basically like a studio exec in the most toned down Robert Downey Jr. I think I've ever seen him in. Like this is,
I mean, 99. He's on screen in 3 scenes and really only talks in one of them. Like he's such a minor part.
I'm trying to think of where Robert Downey Jr. was in his career. He's probably getting arrested or something like at this point. Like he must not be doing well, is what I'm guessing, for him to have just this like tiny minor role, right?
Yeah, I would think at the time he wouldn't have been thought of as leading man material, at least by like the studios.
I mean, he's almost nothing in this movie, to be honest. Like, yeah, he's got nothing to do. It's barely.
It means to an end in one scene. They steal his car.
Yeah. Who else we got? Jamie Kennedy at the height of Jamie Kennedy, I feel like, right? Like 90s, early 2000s is when Jamie Kennedy had his little run. He's playing Dave, the cameraman, who basically works on a film studio and like steals a camera for them whenever they need it. Yeah,
he's like low man on the totem pole, like just doing odd jobs, washing cars and stuff for like people on this actual movie studio lot. And so he has access to like sneak out vehicles that they can use in their film or like cameras that they can shoot with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like him in this movie as like, he's kind of the down to earth. He's the one person that from the beginning, Steve Martin lets in on his plan.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For sure.
I like him in this.
Yeah, he's really good. Got a couple other people, but I don't know if we recognize them. Adam Alexei Malay? I don't know who that was.
He plays Afram, the screenwriter.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The aliens come down in the raindrops, hence chubby rain.
Oh, man. That's so funny.
I've always liked that guy from this. I don't know if I've actually seen him in anything else.
But you got a couple things listed, but I don't. Yeah.
I wrote down the things that like jumped out at me, like, oh, I've heard of these, but I've seen The Man Who Wasn't There, but I don't remember him in it. But
sure,
I always liked him in this. And then the other guy that I wrote down is Cole Sudduth. He's like the hunky leading man of the movie outside of Eddie Murphy.
9 made-for-TV Jesse Stone movies?
Yeah, so the funny thing is I was looking up his filmography and I'm like, okay, 54 Rounders. I just rewatched that. I don't remember him in those movies. Road Trip, same thing. But then like at the bottom of his filmography was like in the 90s, early 2000s. I don't even know what studio he did them for, but Tom Selleck did a series of made-for-TV movies where he played a character named Jesse Stone. So I think the first one is just called like Stone Cold or something. And then the next title. 8 are called like Jesse Stone, something. And yeah, this guy played some kind of role in all of those movies. He had a nickname. I didn't write it down, but like if his name was like Bob Johnson, it was like Bob Suitcase Johnson or something like that. And I was just like, that's a funny factoid about this guy who I otherwise don't know.
Hey man, get that money for real, right? Like if you could be in 9 movies of Tom Selleck, be in 9 movies of Tom Selleck for sure. That's hilarious. Suitcase. He plays the same guy, Luther Suitcase Simpson.
Yeah, there you go.
It says co-starring opposite Tom Selleck, so that means he was actually like not just that guy, like he's actually in a lot of them. Interesting. Yeah. All right, so Steve Martin is excellent in this picture. I love when Steve Martin is conniving, and I think that's why I like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels so much. Is I like the dumb Steve Martin, like the silly, over the top, the jerk kind of stuff. But I think Steve Martin is the best when he's like a liar and he's putting himself in situations that he just cannot get himself out of. And the whole setup of the movie is him trying to sell this movie. And that's like the first, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. And I thought, man, this is Steve Martin at his best. Just being a liar, just being a salesman, telling people what they want to hear with that like dry sense of humor, and then that look that he gives where he kind of like squints his eyes and he's like trying to make you believe what he's selling. I just love that Steve Martin. I think it's really funny.
He's flying by the seat of his pants. Like as things constantly go wrong, he's just like changing direction constantly.
I like when he goes back to them after being rejected and getting thrown out of Eddie Murphy's car. He's trying to tell them that the movie's not getting made, right? And he just like
can't do it.
Yeah, he just can't do it. He like gets lower and lower into his chair, and his face like scooches up, and he's like, he said yes, and it's just like a total lie. But I love that's the Steve Martin that I really
think
love.
That's one of the things for me. I already made the comparison with Galaxy Quest. Like Galaxy Quest, I think is a clever concept, pretty well executed with a pretty good cast, but it also has this like sentimentality, and it's all about like, oh, at the end, we're all good friends and we're all like support each other. And this movie's kind of the same thing. Like, yes, Steve Martin is lying to everybody and stringing them along, but it's like they all have like their hopes and dreams in this thing, and like
the best case scenario is the illegal immigrant Mexican dudes that they get.
I love that little like just in the background plot where they're like illegal immigrants who are just like scared and don't know what's going on, and by the end they're all like have their cell phones and they're making deals and shit, and they're like they know like what kind of camera lenses they're shooting on and all this stuff.
I thought that was so funny is after the movie gets they get found out and the movie's not getting made, they went and shot that B-roll footage, and he talks about like the f-stops that Free set to the camera so they could get a better focus and stuff. I thought that was really funny, like a really long payoff to a pretty funny joke.
It's just one of those little things they never focus on, but like it's here and there throughout the movie, and I think it's a fun little gag that they do.
And I think that applies to like almost everyone in the cast, right? Like the whole group that are making the film, like they all eventually figure out or know that the movie's not real. But
even then, it's like they never shout at Steve Martin. They're never pissed and throw things at him. It's like it's like they all know that all of them together are like sad sack losers, and like so they don't hold it against him, you know? Like he was trying
because they had such a good time making the movie, right? Like despite whatever everything was happening, despite the fact that they didn't actually have money.
Yeah, they're breaking tons of laws and doing underhanded things, but gosh, they just, they pick themselves up by their bootstraps and they do the best job they can, and they're not very good at it, but I don't know. I love that element of the movie too, and I think that's part of the reason that I've always loved it is it's kind of weirdly heartwarming as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Man, I still can't get over when Jiff shows up, though. Like, I was so blown away when he shows up because, they're looking for someone that can play Eddie Murphy's character from behind. Like, they need someone that they could shoot without seeing his face, and then they find him. And again, I didn't know that it was coming. I think that helped.
That's
so
awesome
much.
that you didn't know that, because that's just like part and parcel with the movie now. I always know it's coming, and I do love it. But man, to just discover that must have been great.
And what we talked about earlier is like, it really does feel like a different character. Cause like when he's like, can you take your glasses off? And he does, he's like, oh yeah, I can take my glasses off. But his face is so scrunched because he can't really see still.
And really all they did to him visually is give him braces. And then the rest is just like body language. Like you want to talk about, like when Frank Quitely drew All-Star Superman and he actually tried to visualize how people wouldn't recognize Clark Kent as Superman just by taking off his glasses because he had him like slouch and stick his belly out. And it's kind of like that. Like this time around, I was watching and paying attention because he is the same person through much of the movie with the same exact haircut, just different wardrobe and body language. Like the way he kind of like leans back and slouches as Jiff, and all the facial expressions and just how not confident he is. And then when he's playing Kit, he's like, kind of a full of himself asshole version of Eddie Murphy. And he just like the way he fast talks and he enunciates so well, it's like a total opposite. And it's such a great performance. And it's not like something like the Clumps where they like cover him in a ton of makeup and stuff and he just does a silly voice. Yeah. It's like two separate performances.
Yeah. I think what was really good for Jiff showing up was I thought like up until that point, I was like, Eddie Murphy is not that funny in this movie. Like, his character is kind of okay and kind of wacky. And, he's kind of used as basically the straight man, which is such a weird way to use Eddie Murphy. He's got his quirks. He's into this weird Scientology like religion or whatever.
He thinks that aliens are after him even before the whole sci-fi movie that they start filming around him. And he's got this weird obsession with like showing his genitals to the Lakers cheerleaders. So it definitely feels like, they're playing up like a Tom Cruise kind of character who there's all of these like rumors about him and people still say that he's gay and all this stuff. And it definitely feels like they're playing around with that with Eddie Murphy.
Your paranoia is definitely under control since you came to understand happy premise number one.
Happy premise number one, there are no aliens.
Happy premise number two.
Happy premise number two, there is no giant foot trying to squash me.
Happy premise number three.
Happy premise number three. Even though I feel like I might ignite, I probably won't.
So, what do we do?
Keep it together. Keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together.
And what is it we don't do under any circumstances?
Oh, man.
What is it?
Look, I have to show it to the Laker girls.
You cannot show it to the Laker girls. Keep Mr. Weenie in the pants. Always in the pants. I know you want to show it to the Laker girls, but you must never show it to the Laker girls.
It was hilarious that they did show a scene with him flashing the Laker girls with a bag over his head. I thought that was pretty good.
The Laker girls have got to be taken down a peg or two. It's just funny, like, ever since I first saw this movie, like, I keep wanting to say my whole life, but I mean, it came out in 1999, so it's, you know, not that long ago, all things considered. But, like, Keep It Together has been just one of those things that I pull out. I'm not even always remembering where it comes from, but just like in random everyday instances, just like keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together. Like just little things like that from this movie. It's very quotable to me.
It is. It's really funny. Yeah, I love the try hard, the do good, like the effort that everyone puts in, like the writer who comes up with like the special effects for the things coming out of his head.
Oh yeah,
all that stuff. It's a feel good movie. Like I watched the movie and I laughed a lot, and then I just like felt good about watching the movie. Man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, since it's like a longtime favorite of mine, as I was rewatching it this time, there were numerous times I'm sitting there by myself and I laugh and I just shake my head and I go, man, this is good. Or I say something like that out loud to myself, like, this is so good.
Yeah. I was worried it was going to end in a way where it's like everyone's pissed, the movie sucked or whatever, and it doesn't. Everyone's like happy and he gets the offer. I thought that was great. And then I thought it was hilarious that the movie ends with their second movie, which was, what's it called? Something Ninjas with Handbags? Like
something like that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That was so funny. It was just so dumb.
Well, it's just great.
So
it's like,
funny.
You know, it's like if this were a serious movie, you know, they make their crappy movie and then at the end he'd get like some offer from a big studio or something. And his whole thing is, one of these days that FedEx truck is going to come here and it's going to deliver me some important documents. And then they show up and like, it doesn't matter what the movie is, just the fact that he got offered anything is good enough for him. And it's funny because, you know, I saw this, I've always been into like Mystery Science Theater 3000 and like corny movies in that context. Obviously in the last like decade or so, I've gotten even deeper into weird, obscure movies with all the like small Blu-ray distributors that I blind buy shit from, and just my fascination with like canon films and stuff like that. But it's funny that like before I even really got into all that stuff, I liked so much a movie like this that now I watch it and I just think he had to have had Roger Corman in mind when he was creating this character. Because even like early on in the movie, when it's like panning around his office, you see posters for like previous successes of his. Like there's a poster with his face on it that's like black and white for some old movie or something that's called Once Upon a Mattress or something like that. And you get the feeling that, yeah, once upon a time this guy did have a career and now it's like all gone away. And like when Roger Corman first started making movies, he did make some like kind of politically charged, semi-important early stuff, and then just found that it was easier to make like shoddy drive-in movies. But even through all of that, his production company, he would import like foreign films by like respected Italian filmmakers and stuff and release them in America that were like way above the pay grade of the stuff that he was making, but normal audiences wouldn't get to see it because no one was bringing those movies here. So it's like he always had integrity, and I just feel that about Steve Martin's character in this.
Yeah.
Like he wants to do so much more, but he takes what he can get and he's happy with it. And that, even just like Steve Martin being like kind of tall white guy with white hair, like he looks a little bit like Roger Corman, and that's all I was thinking this time watching it. Yeah. I mean, we lost Roger Corman not terribly long ago, but like maybe that's part of why it was on my mind. But yeah, like that adds an extra element to me on top of it even just being a sci-fi movie that they're making, and like you said, the practical effects that Afram comes up with and everything.
But it's not about getting rich, right? The movie's not about being rich or even successful in Hollywood. It's about making movies.
Yeah.
Like there's this like wholesomeness that is not what we don't associate with Hollywood, right? It's like all about the money. It's all about trying to make the biggest and best movies or whatever. And he just wants to make movies. It doesn't matter. Like he believes in it, obviously, but it's like It's basically the only script that he's got. It's
Yeah.
right. Like it's what's it called? Fat Chubby Rain. It's
Chubby
like,
Rain.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like they barely ever talk about like what the movie actually is about or like what's going on in any of the scenes. It's all about just filming the scenes and like adding stuff as they go because somebody wants a bigger part. So they take up their time. Speaking of
Chubby
scene,
Rain, another longtime favorite of mine that I'll pull out every now and then is "Gotcha, suckers." I just love that. That's the big catchphrase at the end.
Oh, it's so good. The scene where Heather Graham does her topless scene and Eddie Murphy's reaction to it, because he's supposed to just stand there and be behind. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And apparently he improvised all that, which is not surprising knowing, how good of a comedy improviser he is.
On my Blu-ray copy, there's a very brief blooper reel. Like as I watched it, it's only like 2 minutes long, and I was like, there had to have been more funny outtakes than this, but there's one or two alternate versions of that scene where everybody starts cracking up and like Heather Graham can't keep a straight face.
Yeah, I imagine. The freeway run scene I thought was also super hilarious of him trying to run across an LA freeway.
Heavenly God, heavenly God, heavenly God.
It's so funny. It's so good, man. I just love all that stuff.
I think it's extremely well written.
Yes.
It's a modest movie in its production, but I mean, it doesn't have to be anything huge. It's got a good cast. I mean, not that, Cole Sudduth and Adam Alexei Mal, or however you pronounce his name, are like, mind-blowing A-listers or anything, but they fit their roles well.
Yeah, it's well cast. It's well written. Everyone plays their part really, really good. And, you got two excellent leads with Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy, both kind of doing what they do best. I think that's the key, right? Like you have two comedy legends and it's written by one of them and directed by another guy who obviously knows his comedy as well, with Frank Oz, that lets them like do their thing. It's just catered to, like, I can't imagine anyone else in Eddie Murphy's role. I can't imagine anyone else in Steve Martin's role.
Well, did you read who Steve Martin had in mind for that role?
I didn't see that, no.
Of Eddie Murphy's character? Keanu Reeves.
Really?
Yeah, or at least he said a Keanu Reeves type.
Okay.
And I find that one hard to picture. Like, I think he could have done it. It wouldn't have been as successful as Eddie Murphy.
No, I can't imagine anyone else playing Jiff. Like anyone could have played Kit Ramsey for sure. Like the Kit Ramsey character is just an action star that's kind of, Tom Cruise.
Yep.
Jiff though. Oh man, I can't imagine anyone playing Jiff. That was so perfect, and he did it so well.
Yeah.
When you talk about modest, the budget was $55 million. I also thought it was funny
Holy shit!
When he said that a movie doesn't cost more than $2,000. I thought that was pretty funny. Movie costs $55 million. It does have Eddie Murphy in it, like in the 90s. So shot in LA. Also Steve Martin. Frank. I mean, it's got names, so you got to pay him.
Yeah, but I mean, like Eddie Murphy, I think I just coincidentally have been recently rewatching the Beverly Hills Cop movies because the new one came out not too long ago and I want to check that out, but I wanted to rewatch the other ones first. And I think for one of them, I saw that he made like 15 million. It might've been the third movie, which most people
including
think is
Eddie
awful.
Murphy is disowned. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you figure that was 94, I want to say, so we're talking like 5 years later.
And this is coming after The Nutty Professor, I think, which was his big hit in 96.
So you presume, I mean, do you think that that this production would be like, yeah, we'll pay you $15 million to be in this? I mean, I guess they must have if he's in it.
It costs $55 million, right? Like,
but then like still that's $40 million. And I mean, Steve Martin is the other big name. He's also the one behind it. I'm not sure what he's getting paid. I mean, he wrote it as well, but like his own movie that he's like passionate about, you think he's getting like 15 mil?
Probably. I mean, he is Steve Martin still, right?
Yeah.
Like,
even then, like that's 30 million. That leaves 25 million. Like it's kind of hard to imagine that this movie taking out their paychecks
a lot
was
of it is
25 million
on location, right? Like there's not sets. I don't know if that's expensive to shoot in LA or not, but
yeah. I mean, for the most part, like the ending takes place at
Griffith
Griffith Observatory. Yeah. And there's the freeway scene that had to cost some money to, like, I don't know,
They
if
shut
they had
down
to
the
shut
freeway.
down that road.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the rest of it, I mean, they're shooting in like storefronts in LA.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's true.
A lot
I
of the
don't know.
movie in my mind is in Steve Martin's shitty little house.
Sure.
Yeah.
That little shitty apartment cost them $60 million to make, apparently. Okay, so it cost $55 million. It opened wide August 13th in 2,700 theaters, grossing $18 million at second place behind The Sixth Sense in its second week open. So Sixth Sense was a powerhouse in August. Its second weekend saw a drop of 41%, so about average, grossing $10 million, still in second place. It stayed wide in theaters until October and left theaters after Thanksgiving weekend. So had a decent run, ended up grossing $98 million, so doubled the budget. So
Yeah, I mean, that ain't bad.
it's not bad, but it's not what you're hoping for when you have Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin, right?
Yeah,
Like
if
you're
it could have
hoping
cost
for-
a little less, then that number would seem even better without having to change. But
Sure. But who knows why exactly it cost what it cost. But
yeah.
as far as reviews go, 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars, said, Bowfinger is one of those comedies where everything works, where the premise is not just a hook, but the starting point for a story that keeps developing and revealing new surprises. Shell-shocked in this year of gross and grosser comedies, we can turn to Bowfinger with merciful relief.
Yeah, like I said, wholesome.
Yeah. Roger got it on point. I agree with that. I think, the premise is the hook, but it is way more than just the premise. I think if it was just the premise, the movie doesn't work. So,
I must say, I'm becoming more and more impressed with Mr. Ramsey's acting style.
I'm learning a lot from him.
Well, I haven't felt like I've been doing much of anything.
What are you talking about? You look like Kit Ramsey. That's talent. There are people who couldn't look like Kit Ramsey if their life depended. Robert De Niro could not look like Kit Ramsey.
Annoys me anyway.
I don't know. If I go to the store to get some coffee for somebody, I know that I'm the one to get the coffee for someone. I'm the one that's doing it. I'm the one that got the coffee. I got it from point A to point B. I made sure the napkin was in the bag. I made sure there was cream in the bag and there was sugar in the bag. I did it. Me. And it's just weird to get credit for looking like somebody. What is that?
That's a gift.
I don't know how much of a gift it is. I mean, I am his brother. And that's what's so great about working with you guys. I mean, the story of my life, whenever someone finds out that I'm related to Kit Ramsey and they want me to introduce them to you, and I can understand that, but, it feels good, every now and then to have somebody like you for you, it's great. I feel great.
Lisa Schwarzbaum of Entertainment Weekly gave it an A, bitingly funny but tolerant, bemused rather than bitter.
Yeah. Again, like I said, it's wholesome. It's not, nobody is ever getting pissed off at one another. They're all just kind of like losers on the same level and they know it. So they work together.
Yep. Not everyone loved this movie though. Andrew O'Hare of Salon.com wrote, Martin may express himself more gracefully than Bobby Bowfinger does, but the two share a certain quality of vagueness or absence that has plagued Martin's entire career as an actor and writer. Who?
Can you translate that for me? What the fuck is he saying?
He's saying that Steve Martin ain't shit his entire career is what he's saying.
I mean, how can a person who writes for, I don't know much about salon.com, but like, how could a quote unquote real critic make that claim about Steve Martin?
I know, it's crazy.
I mean, even if you don't like him,
right?
Like,
you can't argue
he's
with
a
success.
bona fide star at that point.
Yeah. He had like one of the biggest comedy albums of all time. Some of the biggest comedy movies for sure. Like that's just moronic, to be honest. Take that, Andrew, you moron. Russell Smith of the Austin Chronicle said, as a diehard Martin fan, I'm still hoping for a comeback, but it'll take better efforts than this to get me back in his cheering section. 2.5 out of 5 stars. Don't know what Russell wants, man. I don't know what he wants.
Like if he were saying as a big Steve Martin fan, I'm waiting for him to have a comeback that's like a big hit for him. Okay, because this movie didn't like blow the doors off. But if you're honestly a Steve Martin fan, like how do you not enjoy this movie?
Yeah, this is like peak Martin for me. Like,
it's written by him. It's him in a great lead character.
Yeah, he's great. Has the fake ponytail that he rips out at the very beginning.
Oh, that's so good. Him with the fucking phone with the cord that falls out of his sleeve.
Oh my gosh, that is so
stuff
good.
is all so good.
Oh man, yeah. That's peak Martin, man. That's exactly what I want from Steve Martin. It's so funny.
Yeah, he's just a great combination of physical humor and just like being able to spin words in funny ways.
Yeah.
He is good. When he's on, he's on.
Yeah. Let's end it with a good review. Susan Stark of the Detroit News said, the funniest and most knowing and at heart sweetest movie about making movies since Tim Burton's larky classic Ed Wood. 3 out of 4 stars.
I mean, that's another spot on review in my opinion. Man, and I love Ed Wood too.
Yeah, it has a lot in common with Ed Wood. I think.
I mean, Ed Wood's in that same ballpark as like a Roger Corman.
For sure. For
you
sure.
know, someone who just was desperate to make movies and they mostly turned out to be shitty, but never second guessed himself.
But the movies, both this and Ed Wood, are about people that just love making movies, right? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. That's Roger Corman's thing too. Like
that's what this movie is.
He loved it. He loved the business, and he knew the kind of shit that he was making. But he was just happy to be making it.
Mm-hmm.
So are Bowfinger, and so was Ed Wood.
Yeah, for sure. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. For awards, I wrote it's a comedy. Like, comedies are so hard to get any awards for, anyways. And it wasn't like, even though it was critically. Did well. It didn't do huge box office numbers. So
yeah, it couldn't win any of those like sci-fi awards the way that Galaxy Quest did.
Right. As far as culture impact, it's a high note in Eddie Murphy's commercial resurgence in the mid-90s. So I wrote down in the notes, between 96 and 99, Eddie Murphy starred in 7 films. The Nutty Professor, Metro, Mulan, Dr. Dolittle, Holy Man Life, and Bowfinger. And up until The Nutty Professor, he was coming off kind of a lull. Like Beverly Hills Cop 3 was like a pretty big low for him as far as like critically, commercially, everything was just kind of crashing down. The Nutty Professor comes out. It's a different genre of films than he's made in the past, right? Like Beverly Hills Cop, 48 Hours, those movies are way more adult, made for adults, or R-rated movies. Nutty Professor, you start going into kid stuff, and you look at the movies that he's making at this time, The Nutty Professor, Mulan, Dr. Dolittle, all made for kids. Metro.
Let's not forget Shrek.
Shrek's a little bit later, but
still, it's like more stuff for kids.
So there's a couple of movies where like, I think Life and Bowfinger are kind of similar, where it's not necessarily kids movies. They're not like adult, quote, R-rated movies. They're kind of like in the middle, and they kind of get stuck there.
Man, I got to rewatch Life. I saw that in the theater and haven't seen it since.
Is that one with Martin?
Yeah, it's him and Martin Lawrence, and it's like a period piece, and they end up like wrongfully accused and sent to prison, and it's like, I think it's like their entire lives are spent trying to break out of different prisons. And
yeah, I'll have to check that out. But
I remember liking it, but I mean, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, so this was like, Bowfinger is a little bit different because it's not The Nutty Professor, it's not Dr. Dolittle, it's not Mulan, but it still did well critically and partially commercially. So that's why I wrote a high note in Eddie Murphy's commercial resurgence in the 90s. I mentioned previously is one of the 3 movies that Steve Martin wrote in the 90s. And then as far as Scientology goes, because it's pretty clear when I'm watching this, like this is a dig on Scientology. So I was wondering if it was going to be commented on, and sure was. Steve Martin told the New York Daily News, I viewed it, Mindhead, which is what the religion is called, as a pastiche of things I've seen come and go through the years. Scientology gets a lot of credit or blame right now because they're the hottest one. So,
yeah, I don't know what I thought of that. Like, what frame of reference I would have had for that in years past. But like I said, this was the first time it occurred to me, like, oh, this is Scientology.
When was the Tom Cruise thing, like the Oprah Tom Cruise couch thing?
I feel like that was a little after this, because it was definitely after. I mean, Eyes Wide Shut came out around 99, 2000, I think. And he was still with Nicole Kidman at the time. So the Katie Holmes thing would have been like
early 2000s then?
Batman Begins time frame?
2005.
Yeah.
So still hadn't happened yet. So I don't feel like in 99, I don't think Scientology was as prevalent in the mainstream media, or we knew about it as much.
I remember the first time I ever heard about Scientology was in high school. However I had heard of it, I was in school in like a computer class and like looking it up online and reading about it, and me and like 1 or 2 other people in class like talking about it and being like, this is fucking crazy. People actually believe this stuff, and like reading about some of the shit that allegedly happened to people who were part of the religion and tried to leave. And that was like my first introduction to it, which would have been probably a little after, like a couple years after seeing Bowfinger for the first time.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. I think it would probably go over most people's heads in 1999.
Yeah.
Prior to the whole Tom Cruise on Oprah thing. But Steve Martin at this point has been in Hollywood for, 25, 30 years.
Oh, I'm sure if you're in Hollywood and you're like in that, like, kind of social group, then yeah, he probably knew about it way before I did.
For sure. So yeah, I think that's it. Any other last thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Always loved it, still do. I mean, I really think that this is a movie that more people need to see. Like, if you haven't seen this and you're hearing us talk about it, do yourself a favor and watch Bowfinger. I love this movie. So
the question is, did I miss it? Answer is super obvious by this conversation, I would think. Like, I totally missed this. Like, I feel like if I had seen this in 99, I would have been like one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, It would have just been like in the rotation, like constantly, or I'm watching it yearly, if not every other year, because it's so funny. And I love a good raunchy comedy. I'm a big fan of like Super Mad and a lot of stuff that Judd Apatow has done, or even like the American Pie movies. But it's kind of refreshing to have like a wholesome comedy. Like, there's no like swearing. The sex isn't like, it's like all vague and like implied and then shown. It's not vulgar or graphic. And I'm not saying you can't have that stuff, but it's nice every once in a while to have like a wholesome, feel good comedy. And that's totally what this is. And it's just like, I got done watching it and I'm like, I could watch that again. It was so funny. Like, it flies by. Characters are so good. It's so well written, well directed, well acted. And
everybody is like perfect in their roles as far as the cast is concerned.
Totally. Like, Kristen Baranski is someone who, like, I've seen her in a million things. I would never have been able to pick out who she was by name before. She was so funny in this. She's not in it a ton, but what she does, it's really, really funny. Like, her confronting him secretly and making him think that aliens are real, because she's having this like totally weird conversation that she's
talking about the movie. He thinks she's talking about real aliens because he doesn't know that she's an actress.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So like, it just feels good. It's really, really good. I'm glad to have seen it. I'll definitely be watching it again. And maybe one of the biggest movies I think I missed from 1999 with how much I really, really liked it. So
yeah, cool.
That's gonna do it for episode number 8 in Bowfinger. All right, so we're coming down to the end of the season. Next episode is going to be your choice, and it is Girl Interrupted. Starring Winona Ryder,
Angelina Jolie, Clea Duvall, others. Brittany Murphy, I think, is in it.
Oh, wow. So it's a movie that neither one of us has watched, so we'll find out if we both missed it or not. So come back for that. All right, that's going to do it. I'm Jesse Munoz.
Ryan Miller.
Back next time for Girl Interrupted.